Hi, this is the Pathway 3 Unit 1 Operations Test Review. All right, number 1 says to simplify the expression -2 minus 4 over 8 minus 20. So this is a division problem that I need to work out the numerator and the denominator first before I can divide. So on top, I have -32 minus 4, so I'm subtracting integers, and one of them is negative. So I'm going to go ahead and use keep, change on this to make it an addition problem. I'm going to keep the -32, change to add, change 4 to the opposite. So now it's -4. Bottom, it's also subtraction, so I'm going to do the same thing. Keep the 8, change subtraction to add, change 20 to the opposite, which is -20. All right, then on top, -32 plus -4, I'm adding integers with the same sign, so that's -36. On bottom, 8 plus -20, since they're different signs, I'm going to find the difference. I'm going to subtract them. That gives me 12, and since I have more negatives, it's going to be -12. Then I'm going to divide. 36 divided by 12 is 3, and this is going to be positive because a negative divided by a negative is positive. So for multiplying and dividing, you can use sleeping man. So if I cover up my two negatives, I can see my answer is +3. All right. On number 2, it says simplify the expression 6 minus 5, and then in parentheses, -4. So this means multiplication, and I need to follow PEMDAS whenever I'm evaluating expression. So because I have subtraction and I have multiplication, multiplication comes first. So I'm going to start by multiplying 5 times -4. So now I have 6 minus 5 times -4 is -20. All right. So now I can subtract, because again, I'm subtracting integers. I'm going to rewrite this as addition. So this is going to be keep the 6, change to add, and change -20 to the opposite, which is +20. And then I'm just going to add these two together. 6 plus 20 is 26, and it's +26. All right, number 3 says which of these expressions have the greatest value? So since this is subtraction, I need to use keep, change on this one. So -8, change to add, change to the opposite, and these are different, so I'm going to subtract -8 and 4, that gives me 4, and I have more negatives, so my answer is -4. On part B, these are already being added, so I just need to follow my addition rules. They have the same sign, so I add them and keep the sign, so this is -12. Here I'm multiplying, the dot means multiply. 8 times 4 is 32. And a negative times a negative is a +32. Again, that's the sleeping man. This is +32. D is -8 divided by -4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Since these are both negative, again, my answer is going to be positive. All right, so if I want the greatest value of these four numbers, -4, -12, 32, and 2, I can see that C, 32 is the largest. Right, on number 4, it says which of the following expressions is equivalent to -12? So I need to work all of these out. -84 divided by -7. If I'm not sure what the answer to that is, I can divide it. So the first number goes in, 7 will go into 8 once. When I subtract, I get 1, bring down the 4, 7 will go into 14 2 times. A negative divided by a negative is a +12. Okay, so that one does not work because I'm looking for a -12. 2 times -6, 2 times 6 is 12, and my answer is going to be negative because a negative and a positive gives me a negative. On 3, I need to rewrite this first because it's subtraction, so this becomes 14, keep that, change to add, change -2 to the opposite, 14 plus 2 is 16, so that's not going to be -12 either, so I know it's not 3. And then 4, -22 plus 10, these are different signs, so actually subtract those if you can't do that in your head, and subtract them. There are more negatives than positives, so my answer is going to be -12. All right, so in this one, I actually have 2 solutions. It could be 2, or it could be 4. On number 5, I'm simplifying this expression here. This is all multiplication. Everything's in parentheses, so I'm going to just do the first 2 first. So 4 times 3 is 12, and a negative times a positive is -12. Then I'm going to multiply times the -5. 12 times 5 is 60. A negative times a negative is positive, so this is +60. Number 6 says Evan has $40 in his bank account. He spends $5 each day on breakfast tacos on his way to work. What is Evan's bank account balance after 2 weeks of buying breakfast on his way to work with a 5-day work week? Okay, so he's spending $5 every day. He does this for 2 weeks, and that's a 5-day work week. So if he works for 5 days each week, and he does this for 2 weeks, that's a total of 5 times 2, 10 days. And he's spending $5 each day. That means he's spending a total of 10 times 5, $50. He's got $40 in his bank account before he starts after 2 weeks of buying the tacos, so that would be 40 minus 50. You can see that he does not have enough money to do this, so if I keep keep the 4, change the add, change 50 to negative 50, then these end up subtracting because they're different signs, and it is negative because there are more negatives. So he actually has a negative bank account, a negative $10 in his bank account. All right, let's continue. Number 7 says, after the first round of a golf game, Taylor has a score of negative 9 points. She scored 5 points in the second hole, 6 points on the third hole, and negative 3 on the fourth hole. What was Taylor's total score after the fourth hole? All right, so in golf, you're just adding your points together. So I'm starting with a negative 9, then I'm adding 5, then I'm adding 6, then I'm adding negative 3. Okay, so negative 9 plus 5, those are different. I subtract. That gives me 4. I have more negatives, so it's negative 4. Then I'm going to add the plus 6, negative 4 plus 6. These are different, so I subtract. I have more positives, so my answer is 2. And then I'm going to bring down the plus the negative 3. These are different, so I'm going to subtract them. That gives me 1. I have more negatives, so this is negative 1. When you fill in your griddable, okay, make sure you realize this is one hole, so that needs to go in front of the decimal point, not behind it, right? I'm going to bubble in the 1, and because I have a negative answer, then I need to make sure I fill in the negative sign at the front of the griddable. All right, so it is true with you had a positive answer, you would not have to bubble in the positive. Okay, if you don't bubble either one of these in, then they assume it's positive. But if you want it to be negative, then you have to make a point of making it negative. And you can write the negative up here. Okay, all right, number 8 says name at least 3 decimal expressions that have a product of 0.36. So if I just ignore the decimal for a second and try to think of numbers that multiply to give me 36, I know that 4 times 9 gives me 36. I know that 6 times 6 gives me 36. I know that 3 times 12, I could do 1 times 36. 1 times 36. What else? I could do 2 and 18. Okay. So really what I have to worry about is getting the decimal in the right place. I know if I do 4 times 9, that gives me a whole number of 36. If I want this to be a 0.36, then I need to have, if I want 2 decimal places here, then I need to have 2 in my problem. So if I made these both 0.4 and 0.9, then that would give me a 0.36. Okay, same thing with 6 and 6. If this were 0.6 times 0.6, I would have 2 decimal places. Now with the 3 and the 12, I just need 2 decimal places. So if I put a decimal in front of the 3, I need to just put a decimal in front of the 2. So 0.3 and 1.2, or I could do 3 times 0.12. There are multiple answers for this. On this one, I could do 0.1 and then 3.6, or I could just leave the 1 and do 0.36. Okay, and then I just have 2 decimal places. Here I could do 2 times point, or I could put a 0.2 here and then 1.8 here. That gives me 2 decimal places. Or I could do 2 times 0.18. Again, there's probably multiple answers to this that we haven't even thought about. As long as you end up with 2 decimal places, you should be fine. On number 9, you're evaluating adding fractions. So first, I need to find a common denominator of 4 and 7. So the multiples, I'm looking for their least common multiple of 4 and 7. If I just start with the multiples of 7, that would give me 7, 14, 21, and 28. And I know that 28 is a multiple of 4. So I'm going to multiply the 4, the 1/4, by 7 because that's how I get 28. And I'm going to multiply the 7 times 4. So I need to do that on top and bottom. So I'm multiplying the 7 on top and bottom and the 4 on top and bottom. All right, so that gives me 7 over 28 on this one. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8 over 28 on this one. All right, once they have a common denominator, I add their numerators. The signs are different, so I actually end up subtracting. 7 plus negative 8 gives me, I subtract 7 and 8 and I get 1. There's more negatives. That's negative 1, and then I keep the denominator. Okay, this will not simplify, so then that's my final answer, negative 1/28. Right? On number 10, again, I'm subtracting and I'm using fractions. Right? So I'm going to first rewrite this so that I don't have to worry about the subtraction again. So this is 3 1/10. Keep that, plus change to the opposite, 2 3/4. Okay, I'm going to need to find a common denominator here. Sorry. So I'm going to first rewrite these as improper fractions and then find a common denominator. So to do that, I'm going to multiply and then add. So 10 times 3 is 30. Add 1, that's 31 over 10. So you may have called this Texas. Some people call it around the world, but you're multiplying first and then adding. Same thing on the next one. Multiplying, 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11 over 4. Okay, I'm going to find my least common multiple. I know the multiples of 10 are 10 and then 20. Since 4 times 5 is 20, then 20 is a multiple of both of these. All right, so in order to make the 10 into a 20, I need to multiply by 2. So I do that on top and I do that on bottom. To make 4 into 20, I need to multiply by 5. So I'm going to do that on top and on bottom. So on top here, I'm going to get 62 over 20. On top here, I'm going to get 55 over 20. And then I'm going to add their numerators. They're both positive, so I'm just going to add them. So 62 and 55 gives me 117 over 20. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this back as a mixed number. So I'm going to divide. So remember, the top number goes inside my house. 20 goes on the outside. 20 will go into 117 5 times. 5 times 20 is 100. When I subtract, I get 17. All right, so that gives me the whole number 5. The remainder is my numerator, and my denominator is still 20. Okay, 17 over 20 can't be simplified, so this is my final answer. And it's positive because I added, these were both positive. All right, look at 11. So on 11, I'm going to be subtracting, but I first need to find a common denominator. So I need to go ahead and make these improper first. So I'm going to multiply and then add. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 1 is 41 over 8. On this one, 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5 over 3. You could do keep, change, but since this looks kind of like a normal subtraction problem, I'm just going to leave it as subtraction. I do need to find a common denominator. So the multiples of 8 are 8, 16, and 24. I know that 3 times 8 is 24, so that's also a multiple of 3. So that's going to be my common denominator. I need to multiply by 8. I need to multiply 8 by 3 in order to change it to 24, so I'm going to also do that on top. To change the 3 to a 24, we need to multiply by 8, so I'm going to do that on top. And then I'm going to find my answer. So 3 times 41 is 123 over 24. Over here, 8 times 5 is 40 over 24, and then I'm going to subtract. So I have 123 over 40. That gives me 83 over 24. Okay, so then I want to check and make this a mixed number again. So top end, bottom out, I'm going to divide 24 into 83. All right, 24 will go into 83 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12, 72. When I subtract, I get 11. So again, 3 is my whole number. The remainder is my numerator, and 24 is still my denominator. Okay, 11 24ths can't be simplified, so then this is my final answer. It's positive because I was subtracting a positive minus a positive, and I had enough to subtract, so I didn't have to change the signs. All right. On number 12, since there's multiplying and subtracting, I'm going to start with multiplication because of PEMDAS. So 31.2 times 0.6 is
6 times 2 is 12, carry your 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 6 times 3 is 18. And be careful with your decimal. There's 1, 2 decimal places in the problem. So I need 2 decimal places in my answer, so that makes this 18.72. Then I'm subtracting 20.2. So if I look at this, 18.72 minus 20.2, I can't really do that. So I'm going to go ahead and write keep, change on this one. So keep the 18.72, change to add, change 20 to negative 20.2. All right, but now I can see these are different signs. I'm subtracting. The 20 is larger, so it's going to go on top, 20.2. I'm going to line up my decimal, so 18.72, but I can see I'm going to need a placeholder here. So I'm going to put a 0 there before I subtract. I need to borrow from the 2, so that makes that a 1. This is 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. And then again, I'm going to need to borrow from the 2. That makes this a 9, and this a 1. All right, so 11 minus 7 is 4, 9 minus 8 is 1, and then 1 minus 1 is 0. All right, so let's see. I need to decide on my sign. All right, so I had 18.72 and I had a negative 20.2. There are more negatives than positives, so this is going to be a negative 1.48. 13. I have 4/5 times negative 2/3. When I'm multiplying fraction, I do top times the top and bottom times the bottom. So numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. All right, so I do 4 times the negative. I always put with the top number. So 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. 5 times 3, you only use the negative 1 time. So if it goes with the negative 2, or if it goes with the 2, then don't use it with the 3. 5 times 3 is 15. Then I'm going to check to see if that can be simplified. It cannot. So that's my answer, negative 8/15. All right, on 14, I have a division with fractions. So I'm going to remember the rule for that. So there's a song that we did in one of our videos, dividing fractions, ain't no lie, flip the second one and multiply, or you may have learned this as keep, change, flip. You can use either one. And before I do keep, change, flip, or change the second fraction to its reciprocal, I want to make sure that the 4 is also a fraction, so I'm going to write that over 1. So now I have negative 4 over 1. I'm going to keep that, change division to multiplication, and flip the second fraction to the reciprocal. So you're just turning it over. Now you can multiply. Negative 4 times 5, top times the top is negative 20. 1 times 2 is 2. Again, I put the negative with the top number. That's just how I do it. You just need to put it with one of the numbers, not both of them. Right? So then when I get here, this can be simplified. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So this is going to end up being negative 10. All right. On 15, I need to make these into improper fractions before I can divide. So I'm going to multiply, or Texas, or however you want to think of this, multiply, add. So 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 1 is 10 over 3. Okay, and then I'm going to keep that negative with it. Same thing over here. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 7 is 15 over 8. And I'm going to keep the negative. It's just going to go with that top number. All right, so I'm dividing. So I want to do keep, change, flip. So I'm keeping the negative 10 over 3, changing to multiply, and then flipping this to the reciprocal. And I'm going to keep the negative on top, even though it was with the 15. I'm going to keep it on top. If you put it down here on bottom, that's fine too. And now I'm going to multiply. So 10 times 8 is 80, and a negative times a negative is positive, so that's positive 80. 3 times 15 is 45. All right, and then I want to make sure that this is back as a mixed number, so I'm going to divide 45 into 80. I'll go one time. So that's 5, and then 3. That gives me 1 as a whole number, 35 as a numerator, and 45 as my denominator. Okay, so this can still be simplified, 35 over 45. These are both divisible by 5. Okay, so this ends up, the 1 stays the same. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 45 divided by 5 is 9. Okay, that can no longer be simplified, so that's my final answer, 1 7/9. Okay, all right, on 16, I'm dividing decimals this time. And then if I want to, I can just figure out my sign first, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. A negative divided by a positive is going to be negative, okay? And then if I'm setting this up, the first number always goes inside my house. The 2.9 goes outside, first in, last out. Remember the fox and the rabbit, so I need to move over my decimal place here once, so I need to move it inside once as well. So now I'm actually dividing 29 into 516.2. Okay, 29 won't go into 5. It will go into 51 one time. When I subtract, that's going to give me 22, and I can bring down my 6. 29, I'll go into 226. Let's see. Let's try, what, 3, let's try 7 times 7. So 3, carry your 6, 14, 203. Yeah, that'll work. So what did I say? 7 times? 7 times 29 is 203. When I subtract, I get 23. Okay, bring up your decimal, bring down your 2. All right, so now I'm going to try 29 times 8. So that's 72. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 7 is 23. So that's what I need it to be, 232. All right, so I end up with a 17.6, and I know that my answer is going to be negative. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video here because it's easier to upload if it's not super long, and then part 2 will be the rest of this test review.